The room is quiet now. The world outside has slowed, and the mind begins to loosen its grip on the day. This is a good moment to begin a story that was never loud, never rushed, and never meant to impress. It is the story of a man whose thoughts quietly reshaped the way reality itself is understood. Albert Einstein did not look like a revolutionary. He did not behave like one either. There were no grand speeches, no desire for power, no hunger for applause. For most of his life, he preferred solitude, long walks, simple routines, and the comfort of familiar ideas slowly turning in his mind. He once said that imagination was more important than knowledge. The sentence is often repeated, but rarely understood in its proper tone. Einstein was not celebrating fantasy or excitement. He was pointing toward a quieter skill, the ability to sit patiently with questions that refused to disappear. Albert Einstein was born in the spring of 1879 in the small city of Ulm in southern Germany. At the time, Ulm was peaceful and unremarkable. The city rested beside the slow-moving Danube River, surrounded by modest streets and ordinary lives. Nothing in its atmosphere suggested that it would one day be remembered around the world. His family was Jewish, secular, and practical. His father, Hermann Einstein, worked with electrical equipment during an era when electricity itself still felt mysterious and unreliable. Wires, generators, and switches were new tools, quietly changing daily life. His mother, Pauline, brought music into the home. She valued calm, order, and steady routines, believing that harmony mattered more than ambition. Albert was a quiet child. He spoke later than most, forming sentences carefully and slowly. Some family members worried, but time would reveal that his silence was not emptiness. It was patience. He observed before he spoke. He listened longer than he answered. One of the earliest memories often associated with Einstein involves a simple compass. As a young boy, he was shown the small metal needle floating and turning inside its case. No matter how the compass was moved, the needle always returned to the same direction. To Albert, this quiet behavior was deeply unsettling. An invisible force was at work, something real but unseen. That moment stayed with him. Long after childhood, he would recall the feeling of wonder it produced. The idea that nature could be guided by hidden rules, calm and consistent, never left his thoughts. It planted a question that would grow slowly over decades. At school, Einstein did not thrive in the way teachers expected. The education system of the time favored discipline, memorization, and obedience. Albert preferred understanding. He wanted to know why something was true, not simply repeat that it was. This difference caused friction. Teachers saw him as distracted, sometimes even defiant. He saw the classroom as rigid and unnecessarily loud. Learning, for him, required silence and time. Outside of school, his curiosity continued uninterrupted. He read books on his own, especially those that explored geometry and natural laws. These books did not demand speed. They rewarded patience. They offered quiet puzzles rather than quick answers. By his early teenage years, Albert had already begun teaching himself advanced mathematics. Not because he was pushed, but because the logic felt peaceful to him. Numbers and relationships behaved predictably. They did not shout. They simply existed, waiting to be understood. As the years passed, the quiet child grew into a quiet young man. He carried with him the same habits of reflection, the same preference for solitude. The world around him was changing rapidly. Industry expanded. Cities grew louder. Technology accelerated. Einstein, however, remained unhurried. He moved through life at his own pace, guided not by urgency, but by curiosity. And slowly, almost unnoticed, the foundations of a new understanding of reality were beginning to take shape. As Albert Einstein grew older, the distance between him and traditional education became more noticeable. He respected knowledge, but he struggled with authority that demanded obedience without understanding. This tension followed him through his later school years, quietly shaping the path he would take. When the time came to choose a future, Einstein looked beyond Germany. He enrolled at the Swiss Federal Polytechnic in Zurich, a place known for its openness and intellectual calm. Switzerland felt different. The atmosphere was less rigid, less burdened by hierarchy. For Einstein, it offered space to think. At the Polytechnic, he studied physics and mathematics. He attended lectures, but not always faithfully. Some professors spoke in ways that felt repetitive to him. Einstein preferred to read on his own, to reconstruct ideas slowly, in silence. He trusted his private understanding more than formal instruction. Despite his intelligence, his academic record was uneven. He did well in subjects that allowed reasoning and abstraction. He struggled in those that required strict conformity. When he graduated, his professors did not rush to recommend him for prestigious positions. This quiet rejection became one of the most important turning points of his life. Unable to secure an academic post, Einstein found himself uncertain, moving between short-term teaching jobs. For a time, his future seemed ordinary, even precarious. Eventually, through a personal connection, he obtained a position at the Swiss Patent Office in Bern. It was not a glamorous job. His task was to examine patent applications, many of them poorly written, some impractical, others quietly clever. The work required precision, patience, and the ability to imagine how a device would function in the real world. For Einstein, the patent office became an unlikely refuge. The work paid modestly. The hours were stable. Most importantly, it left his evenings free. Each day, he sat at a simple desk, reviewing inventions related to clocks, electrical systems, and mechanical devices. He learned to see problems clearly, stripping them down to their essential parts. This habit would later become central to his scientific thinking. Outside of work, Einstein lived a modest life. He married Mileva Marek, a fellow student with a sharp mind and deep interest in physics. Their relationship was complex and often strained, but in the early years, it offered companionship and intellectual exchange. In the evenings, Einstein returned home, ate simple meals, and then turned inward. This was his most productive time. There were no laboratories, no assistants, no funding. Only thought experiments, carried out slowly, carefully, entirely in the mind. He imagined riding alongside a beam of light. He wondered what a clock would look like if it moved close to the speed of light. He asked simple questions that others had overlooked, not because they were difficult, but because they seemed too basic. Time, he realized, might not behave the same for everyone. Simultaneity might not be absolute. These ideas did not arrive suddenly. They emerged gradually, through long periods of quiet reflection. Bern itself was calm. The city moved at a gentle pace. Einstein often walked along the Aare River, letting his thoughts drift without pressure. Movement, for him, helped ideas settle into place. In 1905, while still employed at the Patent Office, Einstein published a series of papers. They were written without drama, without excessive language. Yet within them were ideas that would permanently change physics. This year would later be called his Annus Mirabilis, his miraculous year. At the time, however, it passed almost unnoticed. Einstein returned to his desk each morning, stamped patent files, and continued thinking quietly. Recognition would come later. For now, he remained an ordinary man with an extraordinary patience for unanswered questions. And in that patience, something profound was slowly unfolding. The ideas that emerged from Einstein's quiet years in Bern did not announce themselves loudly. They moved gently, almost cautiously, into the scientific world. Among them was a new way of thinking about time and space, a perspective that felt strange only because it was so simple. Until then, time had been treated as universal. The second was a second everywhere, for everyone. Clocks were assumed to agree, no matter how they moved. Einstein questioned this assumption, not to provoke, but to understand. He imagined two observers, one standing still, the other moving steadily through space. If both carried clocks, would those clocks truly measure time in the same way? When light was introduced into the picture, the answer became quietly unsettling. Light, Einstein realized, behaved differently from anything else. Its speed appeared constant, no matter how fast the observer moved. This single fact, supported by experiment, demanded a new structure for reality. Space and time could no longer remain separate. In his special theory of relativity, published in 1905, Einstein proposed that time could stretch and contract. Moving clocks would tick more slowly. Lengths would shrink along the direction of motion. These effects were not illusions. They were real, measurable, and deeply counterintuitive. There was no need for complex language. The mathematics carried the weight. Einstein presented his ideas with restraint, allowing them to speak quietly for themselves. At first, many physicists were uncertain. The theory challenged habits of thought built over centuries. But gradually, as calculations aligned and experiments confirmed predictions, acceptance grew. Einstein, however, remained distant from the excitement. He did not seek public attention. He continued to live simply, now transitioning slowly into academic life as opportunities finally appeared. As the years passed, his thinking deepened. Special relativity addressed motion at constant speeds. But gravity still remained separate, described by Newton as a force acting across space. Einstein felt uneasy with this description. A force acting instantaneously across distance felt incomplete. He began to suspect that gravity might not be a force at all, but something quieter and more subtle. He returned to his habit of imagining. What would a falling observer experience? Would gravity still be felt? In these calm mental exercises, a new insight slowly formed. If space and time were united, then gravity might be a gentle curvature within that structure. Mass could tell space how to bend. Space could tell matter how to move. The universe, in this view, became a smooth, flexible fabric. This idea required patience. Years passed as Einstein struggled with the mathematics. He made mistakes. He retraced steps. Progress came slowly, often painfully. During this time, the world outside grew louder. Political tensions increased. Nations moved toward conflict. Einstein remained focused, withdrawn, absorbed in equations that described a universe indifferent to human borders. In 1915, after nearly a decade of work, he completed the general theory of relativity. It was not written for drama. It was written with precision. The equations were compact, elegant, and unforgiving. General relativity predicted subtle effects. Light bending near massive objects. Time passing differently near strong gravitational fields. These were not ideas meant to excite. They were meant to be true. Einstein waited. He understood that verification would take time. And as always, he was willing to wait. The universe, after all, was never in a hurry. The confirmation of Einstein's ideas did not arrive immediately. For several years, general relativity remained an elegant structure waiting for observation. Einstein understood this. He knew that nature would decide, not opinion. In 1919, an opportunity quietly emerged. A total solar eclipse would allow astronomers to observe stars near the edge of the sun. According to general relativity, the sun's mass should bend the path of light, causing those stars to appear slightly shifted. The measurements were delicate. The differences were small. But when the results were analyzed, the shift was there. Light behaved exactly as Einstein's equations had predicted. The announcement spread quickly. Newspapers around the world carried headlines. A quiet physicist had overturned Newton. Space and time were no longer fixed. The universe had become flexible. Einstein woke up famous. He did not seek this attention, and he did not enjoy it. Reporters followed him. Photographers waited. His face became a symbol of genius rather than a person. He accepted the attention with restraint. He spoke calmly. He avoided exaggeration. Often, he redirected questions away from himself and back toward the ideas. In 1921, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics. Not for relativity, which was still considered abstract by some, but for his explanation of the photoelectric effect. Once again, recognition arrived quietly, attached to careful work rather than spectacle. The photoelectric effect described how light could release electrons from a material. It revealed that light behaved not only as a wave, but also as discrete packets of energy. This insight would later become foundational to quantum mechanics. Einstein's relationship with quantum theory was complex. He contributed deeply to its early development. At the same time, he felt uneasy with its probabilistic nature. The universe, he believed, should not rely on chance alone. As fame grew, Einstein's private life grew more complicated. His marriage to Mileva deteriorated. They separated and eventually divorced. The strain of public attention and private disappointment weighed on him quietly. He remarried, settling into a more stable domestic life. Yet he remained inward. His true home was thought, not place. The political climate of Europe darkened. Nationalism intensified. Anti-Semitism grew louder and more dangerous. Einstein, a committed pacifist, spoke out when he felt compelled to do so, though always without aggression. He believed deeply in international cooperation. Science, to him, belonged to humanity, not nations. Borders were human inventions. The laws of nature were not. As tensions increased in Germany, Einstein began spending more time abroad, lecturing, walking, thinking. He sensed that the quiet world he preferred was becoming harder to find. Still, his pace did not change. He worked slowly. He questioned patiently. And even as history accelerated around him, Einstein remained committed to understanding the universe on its own gentle terms. As Einstein moved deeper into the public eye, his thoughts continued to drift toward the largest questions. Not questions of fame or influence, but questions about the shape and behavior of the universe itself. General relativity had opened a new door, and beyond it lay cosmology. At the time, the universe was widely believed to be static, eternal, unchanging. This assumption felt natural, almost comforting. Einstein shared it not because it was proven, but because it seemed reasonable. When he applied his equations to the universe as a whole, however, something unexpected appeared. Gravity caused the universe to contract. The equations did not allow a stable, unmoving cosmos. To resolve this, Einstein introduced a small adjustment, a term added quietly to his equations. He called it the cosmological constant. Its purpose was simple: to hold the universe still. At the time, this choice felt cautious rather than careless. The universe appeared calm and unchanging. Einstein adjusted his mathematics to reflect that calm. Years later, observations would suggest otherwise. Galaxies were moving away from one another. The universe was expanding. The static model dissolved. Einstein accepted this correction without resistance. He referred to the cosmological constant as a mistake, though the word carried no drama. It was a reminder that even careful minds must remain flexible. Ironically, the idea would return decades later, under a new interpretation. But that future lay far beyond Einstein's lifetime. Throughout these years, Einstein remained deeply human. He enjoyed simple pleasures. Sailing, though he was not especially skilled. Music, particularly the violin, which he played gently and often imperfectly. Music, for Einstein, was not performance. It was reflection. It allowed thought to loosen and drift, much like walking. He dressed without concern for fashion. He spoke plainly. He avoided unnecessary possessions. These were not statements. They were preferences. As his reputation grew, invitations arrived from around the world. Universities, institutions, governments. Einstein accepted some, declined many. Travel tired him. Crowds drained him. In quieter moments, he returned to unresolved questions. He sought a unified theory, a single framework that could describe all forces together. It was an ambitious goal, pursued without urgency. At the same time, quantum mechanics advanced rapidly. New generations of physicists embraced probability and uncertainty. Einstein respected their skill, but he remained unconvinced by their interpretation. He famously objected to the idea that randomness lay at the heart of reality. His discomfort was philosophical as much as scientific. He believed that order existed, even if it had not yet been found. These disagreements were never hostile. They unfolded through letters, conferences, and careful arguments. Einstein remained courteous, thoughtful, and calm. As Europe moved toward instability, Einstein's position grew more precarious. His identity, his beliefs, and his visibility placed him at risk. The quiet life he valued was becoming increasingly fragile. Soon, he would be forced to leave behind familiar places. Not as a choice, but as a necessity. And once again, history would move quickly, while Einstein continued to move at his own unhurried pace. In the early 1930s, the tension in Europe could no longer be ignored. Political movements grew louder. Voices became sharper. For Albert Einstein, remaining in Germany was no longer possible. When Adolf Hitler rose to power in 1933, Einstein was already abroad. He chose not to return. His position, his heritage, and his outspoken pacifism made the decision unavoidable. Einstein accepted a permanent position at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. The move to the United States was not an adventure. It was an act of preservation. Princeton was quiet. The town moved slowly. The institute offered what Einstein valued most: freedom, silence. He settled into a simple routine: daily walks, modest meals, long hours of thought. There were no teaching obligations, no administrative duties, only the expectation to think. Einstein's small office became a place of steady reflection. A blackboard, stacks of paper, equations written, erased, and rewritten. Progress came slowly, if at all. Despite his growing isolation, Einstein remained connected to the world. He spoke out against fascism. He supported displaced scientists. He advocated for peace, even as the world moved toward war. In 1939, he signed a letter to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The letter warned that nuclear chain reactions might be possible, that such reactions could lead to powerful weapons. Einstein did not work on the Manhattan Project. His role was indirect. Yet the consequences of the atomic age weighed heavily on him. After the war, he became an outspoken advocate for nuclear disarmament. He believed that humanity's scientific progress had outpaced its moral development. This imbalance troubled him deeply. At Princeton, Einstein became a familiar figure, walking without socks, carrying notes loosely in his hand, lost in thought, yet approachable. Students and colleagues observed his gentle manner. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, his words were measured and calm. His search for a unified theory continued. Years passed. The work resisted completion. Einstein accepted this without bitterness. Failure, to him, was not humiliation. It was information. As he aged, his pace slowed further. His health declined gradually, but his curiosity remained intact. He continued to question. Not urgently, not desperately, simply because questioning felt natural. The world around him changed rapidly. Technology advanced. New theories emerged. Einstein watched with interest, even when he disagreed. He did not feel the need to win arguments. He felt the need to understand. And in that understanding, partial or incomplete, he found quiet contentment. In his later years, Albert Einstein lived much as he always had. Quietly, without urgency. The world regarded him as a symbol of genius, but he experienced himself simply as a man still thinking. His days followed a gentle rhythm. Morning walks through Princeton. Simple meals. Hours spent with paper and pencil. The absence of pressure was intentional. He no longer sought recognition. He no longer chased completion. The unified theory he pursued remained unfinished, but this did not trouble him deeply. Some questions, he believed, were meant to remain open. Friends noticed his increasing solitude. Not loneliness, but preference. Einstein had always been inward. Now, age gave him permission to remain there. He continued to receive letters from around the world. Students, scientists, ordinary people. Many sought answers. Others sought reassurance. Einstein replied selectively. When he did, his tone was patient and kind. He avoided authority. He spoke as a fellow traveler rather than an expert. As his health declined, he became more reflective. He spoke less about physics and more about responsibility, about humility, about the limits of certainty. He believed that science was a powerful tool, but not a moral compass. Knowledge without wisdom could become dangerous. This belief guided his final public statements. In 1955, Einstein's health worsened. An internal condition progressed quietly. He refused aggressive treatment. He preferred comfort and clarity. He continued working until the end. Notes lay beside his bed. Equations unfinished. Thoughts still unfolding. On April 18, 1955, Albert Einstein died in Princeton. There was no spectacle, no ceremony he would have approved, only quiet acknowledgement. In accordance with his wishes, his body was cremated, his ashes scattered. No grave, no monument. He had never wanted one. What remained were ideas. Not fixed truths, but invitations. Ways of seeing the universe differently. Einstein never claimed to understand reality completely. He claimed only to ask better questions, to listen more closely, to remain patient. His legacy is not contained in equations alone. It exists in the attitude he embodied. Curiosity without arrogance. Confidence without noise. Depth without urgency. As the world continues to move faster, his life offers a different rhythm. A reminder that understanding does not require haste. That silence can be productive. That thinking, when done gently, can change everything. And now, as the mind begins to rest, his story can rest as well. Not as an ending, but as a quiet continuation. Although Albert Einstein's life appeared simple on the surface, his inner world remained vast and layered. Long after his most famous discoveries, he continued to revisit the same ideas, turning them gently, as one might turn a smooth stone in the hand. Time, in particular, never stopped interesting him. Not time as measured by clocks, but time as experienced. He wondered how perception shaped understanding, how memory stretched moments, how anticipation altered the present. These reflections were not formal research. They were personal. Einstein believed that science and philosophy were never fully separate. Both emerged from the same quiet curiosity. He often spoke about simplicity, not as reduction, but as clarity. To remove what was unnecessary, to arrive at the essence of a problem. This habit guided his thinking in physics and in life. At Princeton, younger scientists sometimes approached him with excitement. They wanted answers. They wanted direction. Einstein listened carefully. He rarely gave direct solutions. Instead, he asked questions in return. Questions that slowed the conversation. Questions that encouraged patience. Einstein believed that confusion was not a failure. It was a signal, a sign that understanding had not yet settled into place. In his private notes, he returned repeatedly to geometry, curves, relationships that existed independent of measurement. To him, geometry felt timeless, a language spoken by the universe itself. Despite his disagreements with quantum mechanics, he followed its progress closely. He admired the mathematical beauty. He respected the minds behind it. His objections were calm, never dismissive. He worried that accepting randomness too easily might discourage deeper inquiry. That mystery should invite persistence, not resignation. Outside of science, Einstein reflected often on ethics. He believed that compassion was not optional. That intellectual achievement without empathy was incomplete. He supported civil rights. He spoke against racism in the United States. These positions were not fashionable at the time. But Einstein did not calibrate his beliefs to popularity. He believed that silence, when injustice was visible, was a form of agreement. So he spoke, quietly, clearly, without hostility. In daily life, he remained modest. He forgot appointments. He lost papers. He laughed easily at himself. Friends described him as warm, approachable, and absent-minded. These traits were not cultivated. They were natural. Einstein did not divide life into work and rest. Thinking was not labor to him. It was a state of being. Even as the years passed, he retained a childlike sense of wonder. Not excitement, but openness. A willingness to be surprised. This openness, more than intelligence alone, defined him. And it continued to shape his days, gently, until the very end. Einstein's relationship with the public remained complicated. He understood that people were drawn not only to his ideas, but to what he represented. To many, he was proof that the universe could be understood through quiet thought rather than force. He accepted this role cautiously. He avoided simplified explanations when they distorted meaning. At the same time, he believed that knowledge should not be locked away. Science, he felt, belonged to everyone. When asked to explain his work, he often used gentle metaphors. Elevators, trains, light traveling across empty space. These images were not meant to impress. They were meant to slow the listener down. Einstein believed that understanding arrived best when pressure was removed, when the mind felt safe enough to wander. He distrusted certainty that arrived too quickly. In his view, strong opinions often formed where understanding was weakest. Patience, by contrast, created room for depth. Throughout his life, he remained suspicious of rigid systems. Political, religious, scientific. Any structure that discouraged questioning made him uneasy. This attitude did not make him rebellious. It made him careful. He preferred flexibility to obedience. Inquiry to loyalty. Einstein also reflected often on failure. He did not see it as a verdict. He saw it as a step. Many of his ideas did not work. Many calculations led nowhere. He accepted this as natural. To him, persistence was not stubbornness. It was respect for complexity. As years passed, the scientific world moved in directions he had not chosen. New fields emerged. New tools. New languages of mathematics. Einstein watched these developments quietly. Sometimes with admiration. Sometimes with doubt. Always with interest. He never felt left behind. He felt simply located elsewhere. Letters from old colleagues arrived less frequently. Younger generations knew him more as a symbol than a collaborator. This distance did not trouble him. He had never measured himself by comparison, only by clarity. In the evenings, he returned to music. The violin rested easily in his hands. The notes were not precise. That did not matter. Music, like thought, did not need to arrive anywhere. It needed only to move gently. Einstein believed that beauty mattered. Not beauty as decoration. Beauty as coherence. As ideas fitting together naturally. This sense of coherence guided his lifelong search. Even when results remained incomplete, the search itself felt meaningful. He once remarked that a life devoted to others was worth living. For him, this devotion included sharing ideas, encouraging curiosity, defending human dignity. These commitments did not fade with age. They softened. They deepened. And as the world continued its restless motion, Einstein remained a steady point. Not fixed, but balanced. As the decades passed, Einstein's presence became almost timeless. He was seen walking the same paths, wearing the same simple clothes, carrying the same quiet attention wherever he went. Time moved forward, yet he seemed only loosely attached to it. At Princeton, his routine rarely changed. He arrived at his office without ceremony. He worked without interruption. He left without announcement. There was comfort in repetition. Einstein believed that routine freed the mind. When daily decisions were minimized, deeper thought could emerge naturally. This principle shaped his life as much as his work. Visitors sometimes expected intensity. They expected urgency. Instead, they found calm. Einstein listened slowly. He paused before responding. Silence was never awkward for him. It was useful. He often emphasized that understanding did not come from speed. Quick answers, he believed, were often shallow. Enduring insight required time. In conversations, he avoided technical dominance. He explained concepts in layers. If one layer was enough, he stopped. If not, he continued gently. He never tried to overwhelm. He tried to clarify. This approach made him an unusual mentor. He did not produce followers in his image. He encouraged independence. Einstein trusted that each mind had its own rhythm. Forcing alignment felt counterproductive. Outside of work, he remained engaged with the broader world. He followed global events. He reflected on humanity's direction. He worried quietly. He believed that scientific progress had outpaced ethical reflection. That knowledge was accumulating faster than wisdom. This imbalance troubled him deeply. He wrote essays on peace, on education, on freedom of thought. They were calm, measured, unadorned. Einstein avoided ideological extremes. He distrusted absolute positions. He believed that reality was always more nuanced than slogans allowed. Despite his caution, he did not retreat into neutrality. When he believed something mattered, he spoke. Not loudly, not aggressively, but clearly. His voice carried weight because it was restrained. As age advanced, his physical energy declined. His mental clarity remained strong. He continued to work each day, though for shorter periods. He accepted limitation without frustration. Limits, to him, were part of structure, not enemies. In moments of rest, he gazed outward, at trees, at water, at light shifting across surfaces. These moments were not escapes. They were continuations of thought. Einstein did not separate thinking from living. They flowed together, slowly, naturally. And in that slow flow, his days found balance. Einstein's thoughts often returned to the idea of understanding as a moral act. To seek clarity, in his view, was a form of respect for the universe. Confusion deserved patience, not dismissal. He believed that every genuine question carried dignity, even those without immediate answers. Especially those without immediate answers. In letters written late in life, he reflected on the limits of human knowledge. He did not see these limits as failures. They were boundaries that gave shape to inquiry. Without limits, thought would dissolve. With them, it gained direction. Einstein often warned against mistaking precision for truth. Equations could be exact and still incomplete. Models could be useful and still provisional. This awareness kept him humble. He never believed his work represented a final word, only a clearer sentence in a much longer conversation. As younger scientists advanced theories beyond his own, Einstein watched with calm distance. He did not compete. He did not defend territory. He understood that science moved forward through disagreement, through revision, through replacement. This did not diminish his contribution. It completed it. Einstein valued independence of thought above alignment. He encouraged students to challenge him, to challenge authority, to challenge themselves. Obedience, he believed, was rarely creative. In public talks, he often returned to education. He believed that learning should cultivate curiosity, not compliance. That memorization without understanding weakened the mind. He disliked examinations that rewarded speed. They favored recall over insight, performance over reflection. Einstein believed that genuine learning felt slow, even uncomfortable. Understanding, when it arrived, felt quiet rather than triumphant. At home, his life remained modest. He lived without luxury. He kept few possessions. He valued letters, books, and music. Visitors noticed the simplicity. There were no symbols of status, no displays of achievement. Einstein did not surround himself with reminders of success. He preferred reminders of questions still open. As time passed, his correspondence became more reflective, less technical, more philosophical. He spoke of responsibility, of shared humanity, of the fragile balance between power and wisdom. These were not conclusions. They were concerns, offered gently. Einstein understood that influence could not be controlled. Only intention could. And so he focused on intention, on clarity, on patience. These remained his compass, even as the years continued to pass quietly by. As Einstein entered the final phase of his life, his attention shifted even more toward reflection. Not reflection as nostalgia, but as quiet evaluation. He looked at the arc of his work without pride or regret, only with curiosity. He believed that every life followed a pattern, not a plan, but a shape, a movement from simplicity to complexity, and sometimes back again. In his case, the movement had always been inward. Outward recognition arrived late and felt secondary. The real journey had taken place in silence. Einstein often spoke about wonder, not the loud kind that demands reaction, the quiet kind that rests comfortably beside uncertainty. He believed that losing this sense of wonder was more dangerous than being wrong. Certainty, when held too tightly, closed doors. Wonder kept them open. In conversations with close friends, he reflected on death without fear. He saw it as a natural boundary, a final limit that gave meaning to time. Without an end, moments would lose weight. With one, attention sharpened. Einstein did not believe in personal immortality. He believed in continuity. Ideas passed on. Questions inherited. Curiosity renewed. This view brought him calm. There was no urgency to complete everything. Others would continue. He remained intellectually active until the very end. Even when physical strength declined, his mind stayed gentle and alert. He continued reading, writing, thinking. Pain and discomfort were present, but he did not dramatize them. He accepted them as information. Signals from the body, not enemies. Einstein's refusal of invasive medical treatment was consistent with his values. He did not wish to prolong life artificially. He preferred clarity over extension. Those close to him respected this choice. They understood that it came from coherence, not despair. In his final weeks, he spoke little. But when he did, his words were thoughtful, measured. He remained grateful, not for fame, not for achievement, but for the opportunity to think. Thinking for him had always been enough. As the days shortened, his presence softened. He withdrew further into quiet, not disappearing, just settling. And in that settling, the rhythm of his life slowed naturally, like a wave returning to the sea. After Einstein's passing, the world continued almost immediately. New discoveries, new conflicts, new questions. Yet his presence did not vanish. It settled into the background, quiet but persistent. His papers were studied carefully, his letters reread, his unfinished notes examined with patience. Some hoped to complete what he had begun. Others simply wished to understand how he had thought. Einstein himself would likely have preferred the second. Completion had never been his primary goal. Understanding was. He believed that the value of an idea was not only in its result, but in the way it trained the mind. To think clearly, to question gently, to resist unnecessary certainty. In universities around the world, his name became shorthand. For genius, for insight, for intellectual courage. Yet this shorthand often missed the texture of his life. Einstein was not driven by ambition. He was guided by curiosity. This distinction mattered to him. Ambition demanded outcomes. Curiosity welcomed process. The image of Einstein as a solitary genius was convenient, but incomplete. He relied on correspondence, on discussion, on the slow exchange of ideas. Letters traveled across continents. They carried equations, questions, doubts. These exchanges formed a quiet network of thought. Einstein valued disagreement when it was honest. He believed that respectful challenge sharpened understanding. Conflict, when calm, could be productive. He avoided intellectual isolation. Even when working alone, he remained connected. Over time, his theories became embedded in technology. Satellites adjusted for relativistic effects. Navigation systems relied on his equations. Everyday devices quietly depended on ideas once considered abstract. Einstein found this practical impact both satisfying and unsettling. He had pursued truth, not application. The applications arrived regardless. This reinforced his belief that responsibility must accompany knowledge. That understanding carried weight beyond intention. In cultural memory, Einstein became a symbol of intelligence itself. His image appeared everywhere, often detached from context. Einstein would have found this amusing, perhaps slightly uncomfortable. He never believed intelligence defined worth. He valued kindness, humor, patience. These qualities rarely appeared in equations. Yet they shaped his life more than brilliance alone. As decades passed, interpretations of his work evolved. Some ideas were refined, others replaced. This did not diminish his contribution. Einstein had always expected this. Progress, he believed, required revision. What endured was not a fixed system. It was a method, a way of approaching the unknown with humility. And that method continued to ripple outward, quietly, persistently, like a thought that never fully fades. In the years that followed, Einstein's ideas continued to move quietly through the world. Not as declarations, but as foundations. They became part of the structure beneath modern thought. Physicists returned to his work not only for answers, but for orientation. His equations pointed toward relationships. They suggested that nature favored coherence over complexity. Einstein had always believed that the deepest laws of the universe would be simple. Not easy, but simple. Clear once seen. Unavoidable. This belief guided generations after him. Even those who disagreed with his conclusions often shared his instincts. They searched for elegance, for balance, for necessity. In classrooms, students encountered his name early, often before they were ready. Relativity appeared abstract, distant, difficult. Yet over time, many discovered that the difficulty was not in the mathematics alone. It was in letting go of intuition, in accepting that everyday experience was not a reliable guide to the cosmos. Einstein understood this challenge. He had faced it himself. He knew that understanding required surrender as much as effort. He once observed that common sense was merely a collection of prejudices acquired by age 18. The statement was not dismissive. It was liberating. To learn, one had to loosen certainty, to allow unfamiliar structures to settle gently in the mind. Einstein's influence extended beyond physics. Philosophers reflected on time and causality differently. Artists explored space and perspective with renewed freedom. Writers imagined worlds shaped by relative experience. These echoes were indirect. Einstein did not seek cultural impact. It arrived naturally, as ideas do when they resonate. In personal accounts, those who met him often remarked on his calm presence. He did not dominate rooms. He softened them. He listened attentively. He smiled easily. He spoke without urgency. This demeanor was not calculated. It was consistent, a reflection of how he related to uncertainty. Einstein believed that fear narrowed thought. Calm expanded it. He cultivated calm deliberately. Even disagreement did not disturb him. He saw it as a sign that thinking was alive. In this way, his legacy was not confined to discoveries. It lived in attitude, in patience, in restraint. Long after equations were revised and models updated, this attitude remained useful. It reminded thinkers that depth required time, that clarity emerged slowly. And so, Einstein's presence continued, not as a voice, but as a way of listening. Einstein's way of listening extended beyond people. He listened to ideas, to contradictions, to silence. When faced with a problem, he did not attack it. He waited. He allowed it to reveal its shape. Often, insight arrived not through force, but through familiarity. This patience was misunderstood at times. Some saw hesitation. Others saw detachment. In reality, it was trust. Trust that understanding unfolded on its own schedule. Einstein believed that forcing conclusions led to fragile results. Ideas pushed too quickly tended to collapse. Those allowed to mature endured. He often returned to first principles, not because he doubted progress, but because he respected foundations. If something could not be explained simply, it was not yet understood. This habit shaped his teaching. He avoided impressing students. He preferred to unsettle them gently, to invite questions rather than provide closure. Einstein believed that education should not aim at producing experts. It should aim at producing thinkers. People comfortable with uncertainty. People willing to revise themselves. In letters, he warned against specialization without perspective. Knowledge, when narrowed too tightly, lost context. Context gave meaning. Despite his global reputation, Einstein remained skeptical of authority, including his own. He encouraged others to challenge his conclusions. He expected revision. This openness was not insecurity. It was confidence without attachment. As time passed, scientific language grew more complex. Symbols multiplied. Frameworks expanded. Einstein observed these changes carefully. He did not resist them. He simply asked whether clarity was increasing alongside complexity. If not, he waited. Einstein's preference for simplicity was not aesthetic alone. It was ethical. He believed that truth should not hide behind unnecessary complication. This belief guided his search for a unified theory. Even as progress slowed, his commitment did not waver. He continued not because success was assured, but because the question remained meaningful. In daily life, he accepted imperfection easily. His handwriting was messy. His clothing mismatched. His schedules slipped. None of this concerned him. Precision mattered in thought, not appearance. Friends recalled his gentle humor, his ability to laugh at himself. These moments of lightness balanced his seriousness. Einstein never believed that depth required solemnity. Joy and curiosity could coexist. Lightness could accompany seriousness. This balance shaped his final years. He worked. He rested. He observed. And in this quiet observation, his life continued to unfold naturally, without urgency, without regret. As the 20th century moved forward, the world around Einstein accelerated. Technology advanced rapidly. Communication shortened distances. Information multiplied. Einstein observed these changes with mixed feelings. Progress fascinated him. Speed concerned him. He believed that the human mind required space, time to reflect, moments of stillness. Without these, understanding became shallow. He worried that constant motion discouraged contemplation, that urgency replaced depth. These concerns felt increasingly relevant. Einstein spoke often about responsibility, not as obligation but as awareness, to understand consequences before celebrating achievement. He believed that science, detached from ethical reflection, risked becoming dangerous. Power without restraint could overwhelm wisdom. These reflections did not emerge from pessimism. They came from care, from concern for humanity's direction. Einstein's political views were guided by the same calm reasoning that shaped his science. He opposed authoritarianism. He distrusted concentrated power. He supported democratic ideals. He did not align perfectly with any movement. He valued independence too highly. Ideological rigidity made him uneasy. Throughout his life, he advocated for international cooperation. He believed that borders were temporary, that humanity shared a common future. This belief informed his opposition to war. Violence, he felt, interrupted understanding. It simplified complex problems into irreversible actions. Einstein knew that his pacifism was not universally accepted. He accepted this. Conviction did not require consensus. At the Institute for Advanced Study, his presence remained steady. Colleagues came and went. Students rotated through. Einstein remained. He did not build a school around himself. He built space. Others filled it. In quiet moments, he returned to unfinished questions. Even when progress stalled, the questions themselves offered companionship. Einstein never felt alone in thought. Ideas kept him company. As age advanced, he moved more slowly. His walks shortened. His pauses lengthened. These changes did not trouble him. Slowness felt appropriate. He had always believed that speed was overrated. That insight arrived on its own time. And so, as the world continued to race forward, Einstein remained where he was. Observing, reflecting, waiting. In that waiting, meaning continued to form. Einstein's relationship with uncertainty remained central throughout his life. He did not see uncertainty as weakness. He saw it as honesty. To admit what was not known required strength. It required resisting the comfort of premature answers. Einstein valued this resistance deeply. In scientific discussions, he often paused before responding. Not to impress. To ensure that his words reflected thought rather than reaction. This habit sometimes frustrated others. They wanted conclusions. He offered questions. Einstein believed that the most productive conversations ended without closure. They left space. They invited continuation. He distrusted explanations that arrived fully formed. Understanding, in his view, was incremental, layered, revisable. This perspective shaped how he read. He moved slowly through texts. He reread passages. He allowed confusion to linger. Confusion was not an obstacle. It was part of the terrain. Einstein often compared thinking to exploration. One did not rush through unfamiliar landscapes. One observed. One adjusted. One learned the contours gradually. He applied this metaphor to life as well. Decisions were made carefully. Commitments were weighed. Reversibility mattered. He avoided extremes. Not out of fear, but out of balance. He believed that stability allowed deeper insight. In his personal habits, this balance was visible. He ate simply. He dressed simply. He organized his life to minimize distraction. Distraction, he felt, fractured attention. Attention was precious. As he aged, Einstein became increasingly selective. Not withdrawn. Focused. He spent less time explaining himself. More time listening. He accepted that not all misunderstandings could be resolved. Some interpretations would persist. He let them go. Einstein never attempted to control his legacy. He trusted time to clarify what mattered. This trust extended to his unfinished work. He knew others would continue, in different ways, with different tools. Completion was not required for contribution. Einstein believed that sincerity mattered more than success, that honest effort carried its own value. In moments of quiet, he reflected on gratitude. Not gratitude for recognition, but for opportunity. To think, to question, to wonder. These remained his constant companions. And as his days continued, unremarkable on the surface, they remained full beneath. Einstein's sense of time deepened as his own time became more limited. Days felt softer. Moments stretched. There was no urgency to fill them. He believed that meaning did not come from accumulation. Not of work. Not of recognition. But from alignment. Alignment between thought and action. Between belief and behavior. This alignment mattered to him more than achievement. It allowed him to live without internal conflict. without haste. In conversations late in life, Einstein sometimes returned to childhood memories. Not with nostalgia, but with curiosity. He wondered how early questions had shaped everything that followed. The compass, the invisible force, the quiet disturbance of not knowing. That disturbance had never left him. It had simply matured, become more patient, more refined. Einstein believed that curiosity was not something one outgrew. It evolved. It softened, but it remained essential. He worried that modern life dulled curiosity, that answers arrived too quickly, that mystery was resolved before it could be appreciated. For Einstein, mystery was not a problem. It was a gift, an invitation to remain engaged. This belief shaped his view of education. He felt that teaching should protect curiosity, not replace it. That questions should outnumber answers. He spoke against systems that rewarded conformity. Uniformity, he felt, weakened thought. Diversity strengthened it. Einstein valued difference. Of perspective, of approach, of temperament. He believed that progress required many ways of seeing. No single method could capture reality fully. In his final years, he no longer attempted to persuade. He observed. He listened. He reflected. He accepted that influence faded, that voices quieted, that attention moved on. This acceptance brought peace. Nothing needed to be defended. Einstein trusted that what mattered would endure, not through force, through relevance. Ideas that resonated would survive. Others would dissolve naturally. This trust allowed him to let go of work unfinished, of arguments unresolved. Letting go did not feel like loss. It felt like completion of a different kind. And so, as time continued its steady flow, Einstein remained present. Not clinging, not resisting, simply aware. As the end of Einstein's life approached, his attention rested less on outcomes and more on presence. Being present felt sufficient. Nothing needed to be added. He spent long periods sitting quietly, not thinking in equations, not solving problems, simply observing the movement of thought itself. Einstein believed that awareness did not always require effort. Sometimes it required allowing effort to fall away. In these moments, memory and imagination blended. Past experiences surfaced gently. Ideas revisited him without demand. He did not chase these moments. He welcomed them when they arrived. Those who visited him noticed his calm acceptance. There was no urgency in his manner, no sense of unfinished business. Einstein had made peace with incompletion. He understood that no life closed every loop. Closure, he believed, was often an illusion. What mattered was coherence, that one's actions aligned reasonably with one's values. In this, Einstein felt content. He reflected occasionally on how his work had changed the way people spoke about reality. Space and time were no longer rigid. Certainty had softened. He hoped this softening extended beyond physics, that people might grow more tolerant of uncertainty in daily life. He believed that many conflicts arose from false absolutes, from rigid positions held without reflection. Einstein wished for a world more comfortable with nuance, with patience, with listening. These wishes were quiet. He did not frame them as demands, only as hopes. As his strength continued to fade, he conserved words. Silence became more frequent, more natural. Those close to him understood. Silence had always been part of his language. In his final days, there was no dramatic farewell, no final declaration, just gradual withdrawal. Einstein drifted inward. Thought slowed. Attention softened. The man who had spent a lifetime examining the structure of reality now rested within it. Time continued. Light moved. The world remained. And quietly, without resistance, Albert Einstein let go. After Einstein was gone, nothing in the universe appeared to change. The sun continued its slow rise. Light traveled as it always had. Time flowed without comment. This quiet continuation would not have surprised him. He never believed the universe noticed individuals. Meaning, he felt, was something humans created through attention. Einstein's attention had always been gentle. He did not demand answers. He invited them. In the years that followed, people continued to speak his name. They attached it to intelligence, to mystery, to the bending of space and time. Yet the essence of his life was quieter than the symbols suggested. It lived in patience, in restraint, in curiosity without urgency. Einstein had shown that it was possible to move slowly in a fast world, to think deeply without noise, to question without fear. These qualities did not belong to him alone. They were available to anyone willing to pause. His story does not end with conclusions. It settles into reflection, into the understanding that knowledge is always partial, that certainty is temporary, that wonder can be sustained. The universe Einstein described was not rigid. It was flexible, responsive, interconnected. In many ways, his life mirrored this vision. He adapted. He bent. He remained open. As the listener rests now, his story can rest as well. Not as something finished, but as something gently present. There is no need to remember every detail. No need to hold on to every idea. Understanding does not require effort in this moment. Thoughts can drift. Attention can soften. Silence can take over. Einstein once said that the most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious, that it is the source of all true art and science. That mystery does not demand resolution. It invites calm awareness. And so, as the night deepens and the mind loosens its grip, this story fades naturally. Not disappearing, just settling into quiet, like space itself, like time, like a question left open, peacefully. In this quiet continuation, there was no clear boundary between moments. One thought softened into the next. One breath followed another without effort. Einstein understood this state well. He had spent much of his life moving toward it. Not intentionally, simply by remaining patient. He believed that when attention stopped trying to direct itself, understanding changed shape. It became less focused, more spacious. Time, in these moments, felt less like a sequence and more like a presence. Not moving forward, not standing still, simply existing. Einstein had once reshaped the idea of time through equations. Now, later in life, he experienced it without them. Directly, quietly. There was no need to analyze, no need to define. Experience was enough. The mind could rest without becoming empty. Thoughts appeared gently. They drifted. They faded. Nothing required resolution. Einstein felt comfortable here, in this unstructured awareness. After years of careful thinking, this softness felt natural. He trusted that meaning did not disappear when effort stopped. It rearranged itself. Subtly, silently. Outside, the world continued at its own pace. Indifferent, reliable. Inside, awareness widened. Without direction, without demand. This widening did not feel expansive or dramatic. It felt familiar, like returning to something long known. Einstein believed that clarity often arrived after letting go, not before. Understanding followed relaxation. In this state, questions lost urgency. They remained, but without pressure. Curiosity softened into acceptance. The universe did not need to explain itself. It simply was. And that was enough. Breath settled. Attention settled. The sense of separation between observer and observed grew faint. Nothing needed to happen next. Time continued. Quietly. Gently. And within that gentle continuation, rest deepened. After the story fades, something remains. Not a conclusion. Not an answer. Just a quiet sense of continuity. Einstein would have recognized this feeling. The sense that nothing truly ends. That motion slows but does not stop. For him, time was never a straight line. It curved. It softened. It blended one moment gently into the next. And so, after the ideas settle, Life continues in small, familiar ways. Morning light returns. Shadows move across the room. The day unfolds without instruction. Einstein lived comfortably within this rhythm. He did not separate thought from living. They flowed together quietly. He walked the same paths many times, not to arrive anywhere, but to remain present within movement. Each step required no decision. The body knew the way. The mind followed without effort. In these walks, space felt wide and forgiving. Time felt generous. There was nothing to solve. Sometimes he paused, noticing how sounds softened at a distance, how light changed without hurry. These observations were not reflections. They were rests. Back indoors, silence waited patiently. Paper lay untouched. Thoughts came and went without obligation. Einstein allowed them to pass. He no longer needed to hold them. After years of structure, this looseness felt earned, comfortable. Time was no longer something to measure. It was something to inhabit. Minutes dissolved into hours. Breath slowed naturally. Awareness widened. Nothing announced itself as important. Nothing asked to be remembered. And in that absence of demand, the mind found rest. There is no clear moment when awareness fades. It simply loosens, like a hand opening, like a thought releasing itself. Einstein understood that not everything needed an ending. Some things continued by becoming quieter. The universe did not announce transitions. Night followed day. Stillness followed motion. Without instruction. In this quiet, nothing asked for attention. Nothing insisted on meaning. Everything was allowed to be as it was. Time no longer felt measured. It felt present. Unconcerned. Einstein had spent his life exploring structures. Now there was no need to hold them. They could rest. Thoughts slowed. Spaces between them widened. Silence became comfortable. Breath moved gently. Without direction. Without effort. There was no sense of progress. No sense of pause. Only continuity. The ideas that once reshaped reality no longer needed form. They had already done their work. Now they could settle. Like light dimming without darkness. Like sound fading without absence. Nothing was lost. Nothing was completed. Everything simply softened. The universe remained. Quiet. Open. Unhurried. And within that openness, attention drifted. Not away. Just deeper. There is nothing else required. Nothing else to follow. Only this gentle continuation. Carrying on. Without end.